Hi there. What we're going to have a look at today is changing the impeller on a KAD32 diesel engine. This engine here is a Volvo diesel engine, and it draws in seawater from the outside to cool the engine, and it's got an intercooler here which is like a radiator in a box, and the seawater circulates around the outside, and engine coolant, just like in your car, circulates around the inside. The bit we're going to change today is this little rubber bit. This is called an impeller. These wear out, and it lives here inside this brass housing here. So my first job to do here will be to take these 6 screws out. Just to make my job a tiny bit easier, what I'll do is I'll just take the top off the strainer here a tiny bit, and this will allow the water to drain out so that I don't end up with water pouring out. Okay, I've got a number of these screws to take out so I don't accidentally drop them in the bottom of the boat. I'm going to use the lid off the strainer on the battery here, pop the screws in there, because if they fall underneath the engine, being made of brass, they're quite difficult to fish out. Right, this is the faceplate for the pump, and this is a little gasket to stop the water leaking out. Just having a little look at this just to see if it's worn. If you get grit and material in here, it can score it. It can leave deep grooves in here, and this affects how the pump works. Water leaks past the side of it, and it doesn't work effectively. In the end of the pump shaft here is a little rubber disc just to help the seal. I'm going to take both of those out and remove them from the engine bay along with the screws so that I don't drop them underneath the engine. The next job is to remove the impeller. This one's quite worn, and it goes from being stiff when it's new, quite stiff rubber, to quite soft. That's one of the ways it wears out, so I should be able to just remove it with a pair of pliers. Out it comes. Shall inspect this for damage to make sure it's all intact and we've got no chunks of rubber missing. This one's in pretty good shape. Just inspect the shaft around here for damage. It all looks nice and clean. Feel inside the pocket that it runs in. See if there's any scoring or ridges. That's all quite clean. And the way it works is as it turns, one side is squashed, so the water can only travel around the free side here, and it's designed like this so it can create a vacuum to suck water in, and then once the water's in the pump, it then pumps the water around, so it's self-priming pump. Right, so the challenge now is to get the new one back in. In the box with my new pump, I have a rubber seal, which isn't used on the type of pump I've got, a paper seal, which is the one we're going to use, some instructions, should I need them, and a little bit of impeller lubricant. This is glycerine, feels a bit like washing up liquid, and it's designed to help you squeeze the stiff new impeller into the gear pocket. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of that. Looks a bit like washing up liquid, smells like washing up liquid. For all I know, it could be washing up liquid. Good job of that, makes it nice and slippery. And inside here is a set of, they're almost like, they're called splines, they're like little gear teeth. And that has to locate on the end of the shaft, just here. So what I'm going to do, the pump is designed to turn this way, in this case, to lift the water up and into the chamber. So as I put it in, I'm going to twist it the direction it turns, and I'll feel it go click as it lines up with those splines on the shaft. So that's now ready to go in, and it's just a simple case of pushing it in. If you have to use more effort than that, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so that's it replaced, and you can see here the way it works. It turns round and each pocket of water is drawn up. So I just need the little bit of rubber to fill in the gap at the end, which is here. It goes in the end. My hands, very greasy stuff that. My new gasket, which is just on your floor there, on the floor by your foot, Liam. If you can just pass it up to me. Smash it. There we go, here's the new gasket. You'll see here that the gasket isn't perfectly circular, so it's pretty obvious by the shape on here, the witness marks as the pump goes around, that this fits on there like so. It's a nice neat fit. I will bring back in my little brass screws, carefully balanced in the lid of the strainer, and lining this shape up here with the shape on the side here so that they're a matching pair. I'll get my first screw in. It's usually easier to put the top one in first. What I'm going to do now is just tighten this up. I'm just going to go around with them in order, just nip them up first, like so. I'm doing this as to just bed the seal down evenly. These are brass screws, they're not steel, so they're not as strong as stainless steel or steel screws. So don't do them up stupidly tight. Don't put a spanner on them and try and do them up as tight as you can, because you'll snap them very easily. They just need to be nipped up, just like that. Just nipped up, you know, as if I'm doing it with just 3 fingers. Tight enough that they're not going to work loose, but not so tight that you risk snapping the ends off. The only reason they have a hexagonal head on is if they're a little difficult to undo. Right, so we've changed the pump. Check the strainer's not got anything stuck in it, and we'll replace the lid. And what we're going to do is start the engine up, and we're going to feel the face of the pump here. It's warm because I've had it in my hand. Once the engine starts running, the cold seawater will be drawn through it, and this should be quite chilly to touch. So let's start the engine up and try it out. Still filming? Yeah. Right, let's start the engine up. Now what I did there was I started the engine and I was feeling the cover plate here to see if it was getting warm. If there's no water going through the pump, the friction will warm up the cooling plate there. I could feel it was getting a little bit warm, and we've got an airlock in the top here. So just by opening this a fraction, just to let the air out, and then tightening it up, helped it draw the water through, and now this is cold to the touch. So I know that new pump's working nicely. I'm going to leave the engine idling for 10 to 15 minutes. Just to double check that it's fine and check the temperature gauge, and I'll keep checking this periodically just to make sure the pump's working correctly, and that's our job done. This impeller needs to be changed at regular service intervals, it will say on your engine, or if you've run into any difficulties or your engine appears to be overheating, this is the first thing I would check, this, and that there's nothing in the strainer at the top. I hope that helps. Thank you very much.